Hi, folks. Welcome back. And for those of you that are new, welcome. From Fox News, Ukraine's Zelensky warns of Third World War if peace talks with Russia fail. Zelensky said that if peace talks fail, it would result in a Third World War. Well, frankly, I know he's backs against the wall, but that statement, frankly, is bull. And it is. Could it lead to that? Sure. But not if peace talks fail. Before we get into this story, I want to say I would appreciate it very much if anybody would be interested in sharing any of my videos, the links on your emails, your social media, other websites, here on YouTube as well. You get the algorithm. It's kind of crushing me a little bit because of my politics. If you would, I would really appreciate it to get around the shadow banning. Also, too, if you feel my content is worth listening to, and I'm not for everybody, please subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Let's read on. Ukraine President Zelensky warned of a Third World War if peace talks with Russia fail during a television interview that aired Sunday. Of course he's going to say that. He's going to need all the help he can get. Zelensky said that any format should be used in order to have the possibility of negotiating with Russia, in particular Russian President Putin. I think we have to use any format, any chance in order to have a possibility of negotiating, possibly of talking to Putin. But if these attempts fail, that would mean that this is a Third World War. That's not true. I'd probably say the same thing if I was him. I'm not putting the guy down, and believe me, he's no saint. Eastern European leaders, historically, have not been very good leaders. You can be an SOB and be a great leader. It's just Ukraine is just screwed over by geography. Their just location makes it impossible for them, especially in the 20th century, to even have some semblance of peace. It's just the way it is. They're screwed by geography. If there's a 1% chance for us to stop this war, I think we should take that chance. Well, of course. The president of Ukraine also said without negotiation, he does not believe the war will end. It always ends. You might have some guerrilla, you might have some resistance, but it's going to end eventually. In the American Civil War, which by today's standards would have 6 million dead, that ended without negotiation. So did World War II. World War II ended without negotiation. There was no negotiation. And people say there was negotiation made in World War I, but not really. They just determined when the war was going to end. Germany didn't surrender. They just said, we'll stop hostilities on this day. And I believe it was the 11th month, 11th day, 11th hour, in the 11th minute. They used to call it Armistice Day here in the U.S. Now it's called Veterans Day, which is usually very unusual for a war to end. Usually it ends in the spring, early summer. But I digress. I'm ready for negotiations with him, meaning Putin. I was ready for over the last 2 years, and I think that without negotiations, we cannot end this war. In terms of negotiations, said he would not give up territory integrity and Ukraine's sovereignty. So let's see if we get this straight. You have a strong man, quasi-dictator in Russia. He's saying to them, I'll negotiate with you, but here are the terms. No, we need not cooler heads, but smarter heads. I don't know if those of you are old enough to remember or read in a history book. I was around, I was a young boy, but I was around when the missiles went to Cuba, 90 miles off the U.S. coast. And it was a huge deal. It did come close to nuclear war. It did come very close. It was a hit and miss for a long time. I mean, we went over Cuban airspace getting pictures, getting shot at. Russian soldiers, Cuban soldiers. Wasn't long after the so-called revolution in Cuba. It was a big deal. And what Kennedy did was really smart. You can go against his personal, what he did in his personal life. I don't care. He was an incredibly intelligent man. Not perfect. He found a way for Khrushchev, who was the head Soviet back then, they called him the Soviet Union instead of Russia, to save face. What he did was, and I don't know if it was him or maybe some of his advisors, maybe he had more competent advisors than Biden. That wouldn't be that far of a stretch. But it's got to be one person with enough brain cells to figure out how do we get out of this and have Putin save face. What Kennedy did was this. He went through back channels and said, here's the deal. You pull your missiles out of Cuba, and in a short period of time, I think it was like 6, 8, 9 months, 10 months, we'll pull our missiles out of Turkey. Now, we can't do it right away because we can't show as a quid pro quo. You pull your missiles out, and then we pull our missiles out of Turkey. You can take credit for it with your people and save face. And Khrushchev took the deal. But here's the good part, or the smart part. Those missiles in Turkey are going to be dismantled and moved anyway. So Kennedy found a way to protect the security of the United States and the world, and at the same time for Khrushchev to save face so we could back down. It was brilliantly done because there were smart people in charge back then. Very smart. Let's see if there's at least one left. They have not greeted Russian soldiers with a bunch of flowers. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a big fan of Zelensky. Never really was. I'm going to be straight here. He's a scumbag, too. It's just a matter of degree. And I'm not saying what's going on is justified because he's a scumbag, too. The Ukrainian people have to suffer. That's not what I meant. Well, we're not dealing with saints here by any means, or even competent people. I can live with you're not a saint part. But, you don't have 4 brain cells touching together. It's, let's just say there'll be no war in Ukraine if we're a NATO member, and repeat his call for the country to be accepted in the organization. That will cause World War III. No-fly zone. They never were going to let Ukraine into NATO, ever. Never. Not even the biggest war hawks, neocons, war hawk Dems in Washington would ever allow Ukraine to become a member of NATO. Never. So trade away something that you're never going to do anyway, i.e. Kennedy. Say we will not let Ukraine enter NATO. You weren't going to anyway, just like Kennedy was going to dismantle the missiles in Turkey. You used that as a bargaining chip. Even if Khrushchev knew that was BS and those missiles were going to be dismantled, which he probably did through his intelligence service, it was a way for Khrushchev to save face with the Soviet people, Russian people, and even more importantly with the Politburo, who decides who's the head back then, and kind of still does. That way, everybody won. A win-win deal. Now, can you imagine people that hate Trump's guts? If Donald Trump was president of the United States, don't you think you could make a deal that was win-win for everybody? At least the illusion of it? Do it in a second. They took one of the biggest deal makers in the world and put him on the bench. It's like you're in right now is spring madness in the NCAA tournament. You take your highest scoring player, and in the final game, in the third period, third quarter, you put him on the bench. Your best three-point shooter. It's amazing to me. And he goes on, the people are dying on a daily basis, and they are. And look at this woman here. I feel really badly. I do. My heart goes out to them, honestly. Putin made the announcement to invade Ukraine nearly a month ago, blah, blah, blah. Cost 902 people their lives, according to the UN. That number is likely significantly higher. Government authorities in Ukraine said on Sunday that an art school was bombed in Mariupol by Russian forces. Around 400 people were sheltering. Now, they hit an art school on purpose? No, of course not. These things happen in war. When they were bombing Berlin at the end of World War II, were they saying that the Americans in the English bombing raids, the Americans during the day, the English at night, were targeting hospitals and children? Well, that probably the Nazi propaganda machine did. But let's tell the truth here. War is ugly, no matter who starts it or who finishes it. It is always bad. It should be avoided at all costs. Let Putin save face. Find a way. There's got to be at least one, if not two people in Washington that have the president's ear that can figure this out. People a lot smarter than I. Let's hope there is. And I'll leave you to Robert E. Lee's quote as he stood on the top of Marie Tice. As far as the eye could see, he said, Union dead soldiers, Union blue. And he said, sadly, it is good war is so terrible. We may grow too fond of it. Until the next time, goodbye and good luck.